So now we've even further expanded our knowledge of cascading style sheets. We've embedded our cascading style sheet within our HTML document. We've learned how to affect with the rules of the cascading style sheet an element in every place where it occurs in our document. We did that when we went to the selector of H1 in our style sheet. Then we also talked about how to identify a specific element with an ID name, as we did with the contact ID. And then we talked about using the div tag to select an entire area of the code and apply a style to that full area, as we did with the box identifier. Now we're going to talk about another selector, the class selector. In each of the cases we talked about before, it's very specific where this is applied. With the class selector, we can now apply a rule identified in our cascading style sheet to multiple places within the document. In fact, anywhere where that class exists in the document, the rule can be applied. Let's follow the directions from page 58 in your book, and let's walk through some of this exercise together. The first thing the book asks us to do is to take a look at the H2 tag. And between the 2 in the H2 opening tag and the closing bracket, we're going to add a space, and then we're going to type the words class equals main text. This format should look very similar to what we did down in the proprietor section when we added an ID to the proprietor information in the P tag that was named contact. Here, instead of ID, we're identifying this as a class. Class equals main text. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the P tag just below the tag that we just edited and do the same thing. Class equals main text. Now we'll go back up to the style area, and at the end of the box designation, at the end of the curly bracket, we'll push enter to get a new line. Then we'll spacebar in 6 times. We're again lined up with the other elements in the style sheet. We're going to put a dot and the words main text. Again, you should see a little bit of a pattern here. Both with contact and with box, there was an identifier that came before it. And that identifier happened to be a hashtag or a pound sign or a number symbol. That said, that what we're talking about there is an identifier, something that will only show up once in your HTML document. Here we have an identifier too, but this identifier is just a period. A period says we're actually identifying a class, and this class could show up in multiple locations. In fact, if we remember the edit we just did, we know that it is in multiple locations. The main text class is identified both in the H2 tag and in the first P tag within our document. We're going to go to the end of main text, and we're going to enter a opening curly brace, and then we're going to push enter, and we're going to type in, this time, an extra 2 spaces to indent, and we're going to complete the text from figure C8 in your textbook, page 58. I'm going to do that for you right now. Text align, colon, center. Again, these things should start to look very familiar to you. So whatever is in this class, I think you can assume is probably going to be centered. The next item we're going to put down is width. This is going to establish a width for this class of 60%. Normally this means 60% of the area that would be available to be used will be used. We'll see how this looks in just a minute, and maybe it will make more sense. We're going to keep entering the items from the list in the book. Margin left, auto, and this is the same as what we had for the margin of the box above. And we're going to do the same thing with margin right. Again, notice each one of these pairs has a name to the left, the colon, and then the value, followed by a semicolon, and we're done with this particular set, or this particular name value pair. Then we're going to enter a closing curly brace to say we are done with the rules associated with the main text class selector. Okay. Remember, in all these cases, I'm going to scroll up here a little bit so you can see the 4 that we've established so far. H1, contact, box, and main text. Those are all selectors. The first one is an element selector. That's going to take place anywhere where the element H1, the tag H1, is surrounding some type of content. The next is an ID tag. That's going to be used specifically for any place where the ID is content. And it can only happen since an ID once in a document. The box ID is specifically related to a div tag, but again, it's still an ID. It can only happen once in the document. Main text with the preceding dot associates it as a class, meaning that this can happen multiple times in the document. And again, we just talked about this. It does happen multiple times in this document. It happens both in the H2 heading tag, where we've added class equals main text, and in the first P tag, class equals main text. Now, if you think about what could happen here, I think you can intuitively kind of pick this up, that both the information that's surrounding by the H2 tag and the information that's surrounding by this first P tag, the one with the main text classification, will have the rules that are associated with main text in the cascading style sheet applied to it. It'll probably be centered, and it'll probably be allowed to just take up about 60% of the total width available on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and save this document. Then I'm going to go to the document in the browser, and we're going to reload it and see what happens. So this page is showing up just how we would expect and want it to. You remember that we applied a class with special rules to 2 areas of the site. To the H2 tag, which included this information. That information is now centered as specified in the rule. To the first P tag or paragraph tag, we applied the same class, the main text class, and now it is centered as specified in the rule. So both these are correct, and it's right the way the book has laid out this exercise. If your page looks like this, you've done a great job, and it's time to move on to the next exercise.